friends. Last time we talked about religious diversity. This time it's race and ethnic diversity in the USA. But first, a nod to our LGBT brothers and sisters about sexual diversity. A 2018 Gallup poll says about 10 million Americans identify as LGBT, or about 4.5% of Americans. And Americans are generally okay with that, according to a 2019 poll, which says a majority of Americans, 61%, support same-sex marriage. Only 31% oppose it. And, proud to say, same-sex marriage is now legal in all 50 United States. Now, about immigration, ethnic diversity now going on in the U.S., I'm going to give you 10 big points, and each of those points has lots of little points, and these 10 points are in no particular order. I just have to hurry up and give you all this information as fast as I can before the next test. All right? So, ring the bell. School is in. Y'all better be taking notes. Fact number 1. In general, Americans celebrate diversity, and they say immigrants make America great. 58% of Americans express positive views of the country's growing racial and ethnic diversity. Only 9% say diversity makes America worse. The U.S. is a country of immigrants, with Mexicans representing the most recent wave. Before that, Italians about 100 years ago, and before that, the Irish. And the number of immigrants per year as percentage of the population has varied greatly throughout history, but right now it's on the rise, and it's expected to keep on rising. So diversity is increasing in America. Here's a closer look at the diversity right now, with 62% of Americans reporting white, 18% Hispanic, 13% Black, and 6% Asian. First, where do the Asians come from? Well, you probably guessed. Most are from China, with India coming in at a close second, and Filipinos in third place. Now, as for Hispanics, 63% of Hispanics are Mexicans, with Puerto Ricans and Cubans way down in second and third places behind them. And Brazilians make up less than 1% of the Latin population of the U.S. Fun side fact for you. The number of Asian immigrants to the U.S. is now slightly higher than the number of incoming Hispanics. Most people don't even know that. Even Americans don't know that. So while we're looking at the current ethnic breakdown, here is the projection for 50 years from now. And whoa, is that different? And this difference is probably one of the big reasons why some white people are scared enough to elect an idiot like Trump, who promised to build a wall that he never built. Fact number 2. Black Americans are angry about how police treat them, and that's why there have been protests all over America for the past 2 weeks. Majorities of both black and white Americans say black people are treated less fairly than whites in dealing with the police and by the criminal justice system as a whole. And it's not just state-sanctioned discrimination that we're talking about. Look at the percentages of black men and women who live with racism on the daily, with people acting suspiciously toward them because they're black, acting like they're not intelligent. They have to listen to racial slurs and jokes. Despite this, kind of makes me proud to say, a majority of white people support the Black Lives Matter movement. But there is a very loud minority of angry white people who think that America's already done enough to help black people be equal in America. These people get a lot of media attention and a lot of polite behavior from the police. Even white supremacists who have faces that you just want to punch so bad, you won't find police beating up on guys who look like that. Now, getting back to BLM, or Black Lives Matter. This month, June 2020 in America, an average of 67% That's 2/3 of Americans support Black Lives Matter. That's a tremendous increase over the support that the movement had just 4 years ago, when only 43% of Americans reported support for the BLM movement. The mayor of Washington, D.C., a city that is overwhelmingly black, had the words "Black Lives Matter" painted in yellow on the street that runs right up to the White House. And wouldn't you know it, Donald Trump is not a supporter of Black Lives Matter. He very clearly likes these people over these people. So much so that he had police tear gas a bunch of peaceful protesters 2 weeks ago in Lafayette Square so he could walk safely from the White House to stand in front of a church to have a photo taken of him holding the Bible. I have a feeling that history will not be kind to this photo. Grandpa, come on, tell us again what President Trump did back in June of 20 while America rioted for weeks. And how is it similar to Nero fiddling while Rome burned in July of 64? A majority of Americans disapprove of how Trump is handling the protests. 61% saying they disapprove, and only 35% saying that Trump's doing a good job. And it's not really a big surprise because Trump has made racism great again. A recent Pew Research poll revealed that a majority of Americans feel that since Trump has been president, it's more common than before for people to say racist things. 65% of people say it's become more common for people to express racist or racially insensitive views. And 45% of Americans say it's become more acceptable for people to say racist stuff. A finding that leads to the conclusion that, no, it's not just our imagination. A majority of U.S. adults say that race relations have gotten worse under Donald Trump. So whatever racial harmony was gained in America with the election of a black man to the White House has now been wiped out now that an orange man is in the White House. Fact number 6. The murder of an unarmed citizen, George Floyd, on May 25th is the spark that ignited the recent protests against police brutality. George Floyd, 40-year-old African-American, was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota by this white police officer. Floyd was neither armed with a weapon nor high on drugs when police forced him to the ground and killed him by keeping a knee to his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The policeman who killed him, Derek Chauvin, was fired and is facing murder charges. 99% of all officers involved in all police killings in 2019 had no criminal charges pressed against them. Floyd's murder follows the killing in March of 26-year-old Breonna Taylor, who was shot 8 times in her home by Louisville, Kentucky police officers executing a no-knock search warrant. And Floyd's death precedes the recent shooting of 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks by police in Atlanta as Brooks ran away from the police officers. Big majorities of Americans support the protests over the killing of George Floyd, and they say that the police need to change. If these seem like a lot of deaths from cop shootings in America recently, please remember fact number 7. Every year, police in America shoot and kill close to 1,000 people. America's number 1 in the world in police killings, and although 2020 is only half over, it's still on track to be no different than usual. It's a fact that police actually kill more white people than black people every year. A fact that people who don't like the Black Lives Matter movement quickly point out. But it's a misleading fact because statistically, while white Americans represent 62% of the population, Black people represent only 13%. Well, what this really means is Black Americans are more than 2.5 times more likely than whites to be killed by police officers in America. And that number hasn't changed much since the BLM movement started. So, American society really hasn't been doing very much to stop the excessive use of force by police against people of color in the United States. Thankfully, there is finally new talk about defunding police departments and abolishing police departments in order to address the problem of systemic racism in America today. This Guardian article notes that although police respond to nonviolent, non-emergency calls, departments have expanded their military-style arsenal in recent years. So, hopefully, Americans will keep talking about this until it starts getting implemented, and fast. Next, fact number 8. The massive protests in America have been largely peaceful all over the country. Looting has occurred all over the country, but even the police and news reporters admit that it's not by protesters. So it's not Black Lives Matter protesters looting Target and other stores. Destruction is happening, including the toppling of Confederate statues, and the Minneapolis Police Department building, home to the officers that killed George Floyd, was burned down, with a shocking 54% of Americans saying that burning it down was justified by George Floyd's death. Which brings us to a summary in fact number 9. America has got a racism problem, and white people largely don't want to talk about it. The average Americans, like this guy here, Karen or Becky's husband, holding up a sign in his backyard saying, "Can we just agree that we all matter and quit making it about race?" To which millions of Americans, black and white, are answering a resounding no. It's time that we face the idea that it is entirely about race, specifically white systemic racism by American institutions like the police and the judicial system, and by the everyday racism by millions of neighbors who, because under Trump's regime, think it's okay to be more racist now than ever. When Amy Cooper in Central Park, walking her dog, calls the police to report an assault that a black man is not making against her. When Barbecue Becky calls 911 to complain about a black family barbecuing in Oakland, California, when there are more blacks than whites in prison, but whites comprise 62% of the U.S. population and blacks only 13% of the population, but make up 39% of prisoners, when even women of color take to social media to tell 6 million viewers that George Floyd was a lifelong criminal, a brutal ad hominem logical fallacy, and she called police brutality a myth, which is an outright lie. Right, Candace Owens says police brutality isn't real. It's exaggerated by the media to try to influence the 2020 elections this year. So, many Americans would rather ignore the fact that racism is deeply embedded in American society still today, and these Americans get upset about anything that black people do or say. From quietly taking a knee during the national anthem before a football game, or peacefully protesting to bring attention to the fact that the U.S. today has a real problem with racial inequality. Well, I don't want you to forget it. I want you to say it with me. America has a problem with racism. Again, America has a problem with racism. Don't ignore it. Say it over. America has a problem with racism. Admit the problem. It's the first step to solving the problem. We have a problem with racism. Now keep saying that, and I'll give you some background music to hit point number 10. Consider NWA's song, now more than 30 years old. It's more relevant in America today than ever before.